pushed out to sea. And obviously that rushing back, it'll be gradual.
Yeah,
so people can rest easy to know that that's generally going to be the case.
Right here in the Tampa Bay area, in Tampa proper, we're very lucky. Down south is where
2 days ago it looked terrible.
It did. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. We'll continue in coverage after this.
Of course, the Coast Guard is standing by to help.
And right now we want to go to Jack Royer. He is at one of the vantage points where we know actually that storm is about to hit where Jack is. It's been pretty calm when we've seen you before, Jack, but it looks like it's starting to heat up where you are.
Indeed, Stacy, I'm watching the Max Defender 8 app right now, looking at our exact location and looking at the northern edge of this storm, this massive eye that we anticipate. We think we have a good chance of being in the middle of it. You heard Jeff Patterson say the same thing. He's not that far from where we are. He's in Punta Gorda. We are along Highway 41 in Northport. This is the quietest it has been all day. As you heard Lee Spann point out, the last of the outer bands has moved through. There's a drizzle of rain right now, but the winds are about as strong as I've seen them since early this morning at about probably 4:30 or 5 a.m. It was pretty windy and rainy. Now I'm starting to feel those howls again. I have a feeling, not just a feeling, I can see on our Max Defender 8 app that the rain is not that far from us in Northport here along 41. A few people are out, branches are down, many more than earlier. Here's a big wind gust right here. And just look behind me. I mean, let me get out of the way, in fact, and just give you a view for just a second of we're in a parking lot of a strip mall along 41, very busy business corridor with quite a few different restaurants and hotels. People, just to give you a perspective, are hunkered down in a Hampton Inn just up the street. They are filling up hotels around here. None had rooms available. Gas stations have all been closed. People are in their place for this storm. The winds, I can look down the street and see a major wind gust hitting trees. I can look that way and see it happening. I can look behind me and see these trees blowing across the wind. I wish you could stay with us for a few more minutes, or certainly come back to us in a second when it's pouring down rain, because this is absolutely the quietest it's been all day today, Josh and Stacy, and we know what is coming behind it. I'm watching these clouds move so quickly, and it's quite a sight to see. I mean, I'm not sure what the camera shows you, but to my eye, it's just a fascinating phenomenon. Things are blowing sort of in circles here on the ground because the winds are so powerful and coming in the direction. We're shielded, by the way, while the storm is where it is, by this big building where our crew has been situated all morning. So we're waiting for that to change here in the next few minutes.
You know, Jack, I look at this situation, you look at the radar, you know what is on your doorstep here, and I'm not joking when I say this. Do you have something to grab onto? Because I know you guys are safe up against a building, but you're with veteran photojournalist Dave Kraut. He's been through a lot of hurricanes before. You yourself have been through it. When that comes up and you have that amount of wind and power going against you, what's your plan to stay out of the way?
My plan is to not be out here, number one, first and foremost. Second of all, yes, we have things to grab onto. If you think I didn't think about that for the last 8 hours, you're wrong. We have found bike racks and things like that. So we're safe and confident of our planning and preparation for this, and the support of all of our colleagues in being safe and doing so. So you will not see me prancing around this parking lot in 90-mile-an-hour wind gusts here in a minute, but we wanted to just give you an idea. This is probably the last calm before the storm, but you know, and I want to hear the opinion of our meteorologist, but just in looking at it, it looks like the eye of the storm might move right across us in the way it's been tracking so far today. So we're fascinated to see that. That's something I've not experienced in my coverage of hurricanes in the past. The last hurricane I covered was in New Orleans last year, and that was powerful. Ida was, but Ian, I'm eager to see what it brings, but we certainly are thinking about and praying for all the people who will be affected where we are and to our south, and we just hope that you stay with us and watch it on television and don't try to get out in it.
Smart, yeah. All right, Jack Royer, stay safe out there, you and Dave. I know you're doing a great job, and we'll check back with you when we can.
Thanks, Jack.
Max Defender 8, the most advanced weather radar in Florida. Sponsored by Plumbing Today.
I know Jack couldn't hear me, but I kept trying to tell him that, yes, he is between the last rain band and the Eyewall there in Northport. So he certainly needs to get to his safe place very quickly, because as this moves north, this is the Eyewall itself pushing up toward Northport. So that one rain band that came through, that was the last of the bands going through Northport. Well, now it's in northern Sarasota County, Manatee County, and will be spiraling into Hillsborough, Pinellas, and southern Polk County as well. Everything moving in that counterclockwise fashion. So now that heavy rain is up in Lakewood Ranch. So you're sort of between the last rain band in Northport and the Eyewall that may be coming on shore very soon. And the farther north that you go, now you're going to get more impacts going forward. Already seen about an inch of rain in downtown Tampa along Bayshore Boulevard. 73 degrees at the Winters and Yonker camera there. It is quiet on the Veterans Expressway. Thank you for not being out right now. 3/4 of an inch of rain already, and more all day as this makes landfall crossing. There's a high likelihood that Northport will get the eye, and you will get to see that calm. It's a high likelihood. I can't promise it to you, but that's what may happen over Northport before sunset tonight. But it's still a Category 3 this evening before becoming a Category 2, 1, and finally a tropical storm by tomorrow morning. we're already seeing some pretty intense winds. These are the sustained winds. This is basically just the base when you go outside. 46 in Venice, 43 in St. Pete, 36 in Sarasota. Obviously, that's where the strongest winds are going to be throughout the next couple of hours. And the wind gust right now, 62 miles per hour in St. Pete, 60 in Sarasota, and 63 in Venice. Now, as strong as that sounds, we're going to see those wind gusts, especially in southern Sarasota County, possibly reach 100 to 115 miles per hour. It's actually the reason why that excessive wind warning is now issued for Sarasota County, because 115 mile per hour winds in a sustained large area is possible. I'm going to send it over to meteorologist Amanda Holly to talk more about what these winds could do.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look right now at the chance of tropical storm force winds in your area. And you don't have to look hard at this map to see that there are 100% chance that we are going to see tropical storm force winds. That's 39 miles per hour or greater across our entire area here. Even Citrus County has a 90% chance to see that. When you look at the hurricane force winds, the chance for that is a little bit lower the farther away from the center of the storm that you get. Remember, those hurricane force winds, 74 miles per hour and upwards of that 155, extend out 40 miles from the storm. That hurricane force wind, that spread, the 74 to 155. There's not as great of a chance the farther away from the storm that you get. Citrus County, it's very unlikely that you're going to see those hurricane force winds. However, in Venice, Mayaca City, Arcadia, Wauchula, where that center is going to track, it's 100% likely that you're going to see those 74 mile per hour and much greater wind speeds. And then the chance kind of drops off after that. Tampa, we're looking at a 40% chance of those hurricane force winds. St. Petersburg, same thing. Apollo Beach, 40% chance. But Lakeland, 85% chance there of those 74 mile per hour winds or greater. Now, when we look at the rainfall totals, we're also looking at a flooding threat as we go through the next day and a half. Where the center comes ashore, we're going to see the highest rainfall totals between now and tomorrow evening. You can see the brightest reds here are upwards of 10 inches. We're going to see a good swath of that as the center tracks. Now, there could be isolated areas that see 15 to 20 inches of rainfall, but the farther away from the center that you get, the lesser amounts of rain that we are expecting. But a lot of the heavy rain is going to fall on the northern and western side. So we're going to be keeping track of these rainfall totals. We've seen a lot of rainfall fall so far, especially south of I-4. And that is where we're going to be watching for some of that localized flooding. Our rivers are already swollen because we've seen a lot of rainfall this summer. So we're going to be watching for, even into the weekend, those rivers to continue to rise. We're going to be talking about those river levels all the way through at least Sunday. Guys.
All right. Thanks to you both. We've been asked to relay a message to you from the Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. Now, the communications center there provides all of these services for fire and for medical. And there's several different agencies. Now, they make the decision on when they're going to stop offering services because of the weather. And that mile per hour, you heard the winds, it's 45 miles per hour. So when it reaches that, these agencies decide, all right, we may not be able to help you. And in bold, in their email to us, they says, as you can imagine, it's extremely difficult for our personnel to tell a caller that fire and law is not unable to respond. So a lot of these agencies have already shut down. So if you're in Sarasota County and you're close to the eyewall of this or even on the edges of it, be prepared to just wait it out. You may not get help, and don't try to leave.
Yeah, it can be scary for people. And even though Tampa is not going to see the precarious predicament that is south of here, Mayor Jane Castro is still saying to expect up to 20 inches of rain. That will lead to unprecedented flooding here too. So while we feel for the people south of us, we're not completely out of the woods either. So everybody should heed those warnings. And speaking of this about to make landfall, we're going to take you back live to Punta Gorda in just a few minutes.
And we have Max Defender 8 meteorologist Eric Stone, who is live with our JB Buno online all day. If you have a big question you want to ask them, you can find them on our YouTube page or our WFLA Facebook page. You're watching Hurricane Ian's special team coverage. A lot more to talk about. It's getting dicey out there. We'll be right back.
We are continuing to cover Hurricane Ian. It is very near making landfall south of us, and we are happy to be here keeping you informed. I'm Stacy Scheibel.
And I'm Josh Benson. Good to have you here. I mean, the view is impressive when you take a look at this radar, and we want to get you right over now to Max Defender 8 meteorologist Lee Spann and Amanda Hawley. Look at that storm.
It's unfortunate that it is an impressive storm, because that also means, right, Amanda, it's a tough and powerful storm. I mean, we're seeing the Eyewall continuing to be almost concentric. You notice that we lose a little bit of the yellow as that begins to interact with land, and that means it's interacting with land. And in that Eyewall, somewhere embedded in this, most likely on the northern and western side, we have winds of 155 miles per hour. So that is the core of the strongest winds. Then you get these rain bands. That's what we've been seeing kind of cycling through our area all day. We were just talking about Northport, so let's zoom in a little closer. Punta Gorda currently without rain, because the next thing to come is the Eyewall. Northport, you were sort of a light rain, and now Inglewood, same thing. You're sort of between your last rain band and the onset of what would be the strongest winds that you're going to see, the Eyewall coming on shore. And if this continues to move up to the north and east, you may get that that's calm in the middle of the storm, that eye to cross over somewhere between Inglewood, Northport, and Port Charlotte. Now, I'll show you that some of those rain bands a little weaker the farther you move away from the center of circulation, but they've been moving through now up in Citrus and Hernando counties, and through Polk County, Hillsborough County, and Pinellas County, you have moderate rain with significant wind gust embedded in that as well. So as we go through outside right now, look at this. It is a mess across Tampa Bay. 27-mile-per-hour winds there over the Veterans Expressway from the Veterans Ford camera. A gloomy, dreary day here in downtown Tampa. 73 degrees at the FAS windows and doors camera there looking out into the bay. This storm is beginning to get closer to land. I mean, we were expecting maybe a landfall at 1 or 2 o'clock, and we are now seeing at least the eye wall coming closer to shore. We have to wait to the center of that to be called, the center of the eye to be called a landfall. But let's not focus on that as much. Let's focus on the fact that this is going to hold together and still be a major hurricane as the sun sets tonight. So even though it makes landfall in the next 2 hours, we're talking about 8 p.m. It's a Category 3 just west of Arcadia in that eastern and southeastern portion of Manatee County, northeastern portion of Sarasota County as a Category 3. Then it's slowly going to decrease to Category 2, Category 1 all night long for places like eastern Hillsborough, Polk County, northern portion of Hardy County and Highlands County. And finally, come tomorrow morning, we finally see this lifting up to the north and actually coming back out, going out into the Atlantic. That's similar to what Charlie did. And while this is going through, we have so much rain, we're under the high risk of excessive rainfall and flooding. So even though we might not be getting that surge that they're going to see down in Charlotte Harbor and down around Bonita Springs, our flooding may happen east of I-75, away from the coast, because of the large amount of rain coming down. Now I'm going to send it over to meteorologist Amanda Hawley to talk a little bit more about what we can expect going forward.
Yeah, so we're going to go county by county here and really break down what we can expect. We're starting with the areas that are expecting the worst of the weather. So we're talking about Sarasota especially, but upwards into central Manatee County as well. These sustained winds, 70 to 100 miles per hour for a prolonged period of time as that eye wall moves over you. Those gusts are going to be upwards of 115 miles per hour. That's why we have that excessive wind warning in effect right now until 2 p.m. as that eye wall really nears Inglewood into Venice and into Northport and then continues to spread inland. Again, not really too concerned about the surge levels because those winds are pushing the water out of the bay. The tornado threat is low. You know, we're talking about 100-mile-per-hour sustained winds anyway, the straight line winds coming around the storm. But the rainfall, Lee just showed you, we have that excessive rainfall risk because excessive flooding risk because of the amount of rainfall that we're going to see. So our inland counties, let's talk about those for a little bit. We have that tornado threat. We had a tornado warning earlier in Highlands County. Those outer rain bands are wrapping and whipping around the center of the storm. We've got a lot of spin in the atmosphere, so certainly those isolated tornadoes are possible, and the localized flooding will be an issue as well. But the wind speeds, Lee just showed you that track and how it's going to slowly lose strength as it moves into our central counties, but we're still talking about the possibility of 60 to 70 mile per hour sustained winds in Highlands Highlands County, in Polk County, Hardee and DeSoto as well, with gusts upwards of 90 miles per hour. And that's not going to happen until a little later on tonight. Let's talk about Hillsborough County. Sustained winds of 60 to 70 miles per hour, gusts upwards of 80. Could see a little bit of a surge later on tomorrow, but again, not really too concerned about it. I am concerned inland areas of Hillsborough County, we could see some localized flooding. The farther away from the center that you get, the lower amounts of rainfall that we are going to see. Originally, we were thinking 8 to 12 here in Pinellas County of rainfall, but because of the fast forward motion, I'm not really too concerned that we're going to see that much. Still going to see some localized flooding, though. Those wind speeds, 40 to 50 mile per hour in Pinellas, with sustained upwards of 60 miles per hour. Upwards along the nature coast here, not a whole lot of impacts. We're still going to see gusty winds, but this is going to be our least impacted area in Citrus, Pasco, and Hernando County. Guys.
All right, thank you very much, Amanda. We are seeing water being pushed out of the Gulf near Bayshore Boulevard. That is expected because of where the storm is making landfall. Continue to move south and just stayed on that path. A couple of days ago, we thought we were going to be in the eye of the storm.
And from our studio and from our newsroom, we can look out and see the Hillsborough River, and it's eerie to watch that water get pushed out into the bay and beyond. 8 on your sides, Brianda Villegas standing by right there. And Brianda, I saw a skateboard there, and I'm sure you're seeing other things now that the water is gone. How does it look?
Absolutely. So it's actually been pushed out a couple more feet since I was last up here, around like an hour and a half or so. But yes, I see this skateboard. There's actually a bottle. I tried to look to see if there was a message in the bottle. There was not. But there's socks. There's bags of chips out here. A lot of just basically trash out there. But usually, you know, the Hillsborough River is all the way up over my head. But we're seeing this with a lot of bodies of water here in Tampa Bay. So it is causing a lot of people to talk about it, especially because they saw something very similar back a couple years ago during Hurricane Irma. So what's important to actually keep in mind right now is that if you are in this area of downtown Tampa, zones A and B, as well as if you're in a mobile home, you are being asked to evacuate. But the Hillsborough County Emergency Operations Center says that right now you need to stay in place because conditions will start to worsen a bit, and they're worried about flash flooding. They're also worried about the winds picking up. But if you're actually looking right now, it's starting to rain a bit, but I'm not really feeling any rain as of right now. About 20 minutes ago, I felt a big gust of air, but nothing that is too worrisome as of right now. But that's what I'm seeing out here for now. I'm going to toss it back to you guys at the studio.
Hey, Brianda, I bet you never thought you'd be standing out there. We look at that every day. I mean, our station's beautiful. Yeah. It's on the river. It's a gorgeous spot. It's just so funny to see it all taken out of
Looks like another planet.
It does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you know, whenever Hurricane Irma was going on, I actually was driving on the Howard Franklin Bridge, and the same thing was happening there. But I drove on the Howard Franklin Bridge earlier today, and I didn't really see that happening. It might have changed. It's been a couple hours since I've been over there, but it will be very interesting to see, you know, residents sending us their videos of what they're seeing close by their homes.
All right, thanks so much, Brianda Villegas, live for us just outside the studio tonight.
And if you want to know anything about Hurricane Ian's latest track closures, how it might affect you where you live specifically, go to WFLA.com or our free WFLA app, because we are on this minute by minute. We'll be here all through the night because overnight it's going to be a scary time for those who are watching us in the interior counties. Yeah, and the next few hours are critical, especially on the western coastline of Florida. And as you said, moving inland, it's going to be a long night for a lot of people. So we are going to stay on top of it. Stay close with us. We're going to take a live look from our tower cam right now, and yeah, it's starting to get dicey in all parts of the viewing area. And really the calm before the storm where it's about to make landfall. We'll take you back to Punta Gorda shortly. We'll be right back.
is shooting across this parking lot. I don't know how you couldn't see that. I'm assuming you can. Goodness gracious, this is a lot of rain and powerful at that. I figured out, or Dave Kraut figured out what that noise I've been talking about all day was. It's a sign right here on the edge of the roadway that's just being beaten back and forth. It's suspended to two post. It's some sort of signage, but it's a piece of it coming off. There's the rain. This is certainly the heaviest rain we've seen in our time here. And just to reassure you, I know folks at the station are wondering about this. We are safe and secluded from the wind within a corridor here where we're barely affected by this wind or the rain unless I walk out into this parking lot, but I'm not going to do that anymore given the increasing rain and the speed of it, of the wind, and frankly the increase in all these noises and things that obviously indicate those other factors. So it is raining from every direction. It is windy in every direction, and we are just anticipating this eyewall coming closer and closer to us. So I'm sure Jeff Patterson's seeing something similar down in Punta Gorda right now. Guys, we'll send it back to you.
All right. Jack, thank you. We know you'll stay safe out there, and that is the thing, that this storm kind of comes in layers, Josh. We've got the rain, then the wind, and possible flying debris. That's what we don't want people out in, where a projectile could come and get.
And it'll speed up and slow down. I thought it would have been hit by now in terms of that eye wall, but still some time left. So let's check the latest track now. Let's go now to the forecast with meteorologist Lee Spann.
Yes, and we are seeing that it is going to get worse for him. Over the next hour, he is going to get more and more and more into this eye wall. So that includes all of Northport, all of southern Sarasota County, because remember, that's the center of the circulation. And as it moves to the north-northeast, it's going to push that eye wall so much closer to the coast of Sarasota. So there's Englewood, there's Punta Gorda, there's Port Charlotte, there's Northport. So again, there was a lull in the activity. From here on out, for the next hour at least, if not more, they're going to be in what could be the strongest part of the storm. Likely that the strongest 155-mile-per-hour winds are just offshore and back toward the west, but this would be close. This would be that eye wall crashing on shore. Again, a landfall is the center of the circulation, but you have to go through the worst part of the storm, which is the eye wall, as it continues to move in that counterclockwise spin. I mean, there's Herons Glen Golf and Country Club, Suncoast Estates, all along that corridor there. This is going to get very rough very soon and last for quite some time. That's another wave that is coming through, that rain band there from Bartow to Pinellas Park. And then we have maybe some light to moderate rain, but it's breezy up in Citrus, Hernando, and Pasco counties. And again, we are under a tornado watch for areas from Polk County southward, because embedded in any of these rain bands could be the threat for spinning tornadoes up very quickly. What we also know is that Sarasota County, where Jack is, where we're seeing the possibility of getting that eye wall, there is an extreme wind warning issued, and it is for Sarasota County, and it is also for Charlotte County right now, because we could see a large swath of 115-mile-per-hour winds. So please be aware, if you're anywhere in Sarasota County, now is the time to treat this like a tornado. Put as many walls between you and that house and that storm as possible. And unlike a tornado, you're going to have to stay in that safe place for quite some time. Just to the south, that's where we're going to see the potential storm surge coming onshore. A lot of the areas from Fort Myers south will not only have to deal with the strong winds, but also the water that comes in from the Gulf of Mexico and inundates land. Let's check in now with meteorologist Amanda Holly on what we can expect going forward.
Yeah, we're taking a look at that real-time Wobble Tracker. We've showed it to you a few times this morning. We've really been keeping an eye on it. And what you're looking at are the slight wobbles east and west that the center of the storm takes. It makes a big difference in those impacts. A couple of miles here, a couple of miles there can lead to a big difference down the line. So we've been tracking these wobbles since it left Cuba, and we've seen these wobbles here and there, and it has has changed the track, the National Hurricane Center track of the path ever so slightly. So the latest wobble that we had, it was a quick jog to the east, and now it looks like it's jogging back straight north, but it does look like we are going to see this general north-northeast trend to continue. But at the end of this loop, you can see that eastern edge of the eyewall really impacting our coastline now, and that's why Lee just showed you that extreme wind warning. But either way, all of this going to now move onshore as we go through the next 12 to 24 hours. And we are looking at power outages. We're already seeing about 265,000 customers without power generally down in this area. You are likely going to be without power now, as the storm comes ashore, and if you're near that center, and especially as that eyewall comes ashore. So what you're looking at are the power outage possibilities, and these darker reds, these oranges, that's a high likelihood that you will lose power here as the storm passes. Now, the storm's going to continue to move inland, and the chance lessens, but we're still looking at these deeper oranges and even some areas of that red. As we get later out into time, this is tonight, we're still looking at that low risk for a lot of our area. The storm is going to weaken, but at this point, we're going to be having these tropical storm force winds continuing across a lot of the area. It's going to weaken those structures. It's going to weaken some of that infrastructure, that power infrastructure. Now, if you still have power by 11 a.m. tomorrow, it's a good chance that you might not lose power throughout the entirety of the storm, because we'll actually have improving conditions by tomorrow afternoon.
All right, that would be good. Let's hope for that. You know, the interesting thing about this storm is it's touching so many parts of Florida from the southern tip now, and we don't know the track yet, but it could turn and go a lot farther north than we're expecting. But it's been a long time since we've seen something like that.
Yeah, Jeff Baradelli, our chief meteorologist, came up with this Wobble Tracker, and it's because a little wobble can make a very big difference depending on where you live.
Let me see how much it's wobbled.
I was just reading too, it's a low tide right now in Fort Myers, but the water is from here on out going to start rising, and that of course is right where that storm is headed. We want to take a quick peek at a live shot I think we have from Key West.
Yeah, look at that.
Beautiful area. The storm's headed that way, but they won't take the brunt of it.
That's right. We have much more coverage for you on Hurricane Ian coming up. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Florida counties, you need to be sheltering in place. Don't forget that Ian will produce hurricane strength winds and massive floodings, not just where it makes the initial landfall, but throughout the state of Florida. So central and northeast Florida will also feel impacts. Now, while most people in the evacuations did leave, there were some that chose to stay. I was speaking with the sheriff down in Charlotte County, and while most people did leave, they had a small number of people that just wanted to hunker down. And at the end of the day, that's a decision they made, knowing that they had the ability to evacuate and knowing what the stakes were. Nevertheless, life safety operations will commence as soon as it's safe, to be able to identify people who may be in harm's way and who are in need of assistance. And Kevin will say, I'll say a little bit about that, but Kevin will say more. We'll also hear from FWC about their efforts that they have staged and ready to go. If you are still in Southwest Florida, just please stay inside until the storm passes. It may appear to be calm at some point. You may just be in the eye of the storm, and the backside of that will get very, very nasty. The storm is expected to move across central Florida and exit Daytona Beach sometime on Thursday. We've already seen around the state tornado warnings issued far from where the hurricane is entering in Southwest Florida, and those warnings will likely to continue until this finally leaves our state. So even if you're not in the direct path of the storm, you need to take all tornado warnings seriously, and you need to take appropriate precautions if that is happening in your area. The Florida Department of Transportation has just announced that Fort Drum, Canoe Creek, and Turkey Lake service plazas on Florida Turnpike are now closed. Obviously, they will try to get those open as soon as they can. We have 200,000 power outages reported throughout the state of Florida, but outside of Southwest Florida, crews are working to quickly restore power. Of course, 200,000 is a drop in the bucket for what's going to happen over the next 24 to 48 hours. There's going to be widespread power outages, particularly in Southwest Florida. We have over 100 portable cell towers ready to be deployed into the area once it is safe to enter. Once the storm is past and it is safe to go outside, you still need to be cautious. Avoid downed power lines, standing water. Stay clear of downed trees, and don't drive in standing water. And please, if you're going to use a generator for your home, do not allow that to be inside. The exhaust needs to be outdoors. Stay out of the way of emergency crews, out of flood waters, and away from all downed power lines. Stay off the roads. There's no need to rush back. You're going to have a massive surge of people that are going to be going in to provide, of course, life safety assistance for those who may have stayed in some of the more hazardous areas. You're also going to have power workers going in. We were just in Lake City. I was thinking we had all these power workers, these line workers from all these different states. I saw them from Texas, Louisiana, all these different places staged. We have a massive, massive mobilization. Their job is to get in there and help to restore services. You're also going to have folks bringing in things like food and water. So there's no need to rush back in. There's going to be a lot going on in the immediate aftermath, and a lot of people's safety depends on that. If you're on the roads, you're putting yourself in danger and limiting the ability of emergency crews to restore power and clean debris. Now, we don't know how much debris is going to be, but there's going to be debris, and that's going to make it very difficult to navigate some of these roads. That's why FDOT's immediate mission is to clear the roadways so that people are able to go in and access that to be able to help deliver services for people. In 2019, we were projected to be hit by Hurricane Dorian, which was a Category 5 storm. Fortunately, at the last minute, it took a northward turn and missed the coast, but we did have a really massive mobilization. This mobilization's exceeded that. This is a really, really significant effort, county level, state level, federal support. It's really been impressive to see. Director Guthrie has asked for additional airlift, hoists, and high water vehicles from DOD in coordination with FEMA. The Secretary of Defense has approved Florida's request for dual status of our National Guard forces under Title 10 to provide additional forces, which we very much appreciate. We will also be submitting momentarily a major disaster declaration for all 67 counties, and will request that the federal government reimburse 100% of the upfront costs for the first 60 days to ensure that we can quickly recover and move forward into the response and recovery part. And if you think about this storm, we had storms that have been as strong as this hit Florida? Michael, Hurricane Andrew, Labor Day hurricane many decades ago. Yes. Have we had big storms that left a lot of water and flooding? We had Irma recently. This is really bringing both to the table. I mean, you're going to have massive amount of power hitting that coastline with really strong winds. That is going to do a lot of wind damage, but you also have the storm is so massive, and people are kind of comparing this to the track that Charlie took in 2004, because Charlie was like this, was expected to hit Tampa Bay. It turned and ended up hitting Southwest Florida. Charlie was strong, but it was a fraction of the size of what we're dealing with here with Hurricane Ian. So the effects of this are going to be broad, and we appreciate the Biden administration's consideration for the people of Florida during this time of need. When I was in Lake City, you had massive numbers of linemen, but you have those staged all over the state. There's now over 42,000 linemen and other personnel ready to restore power in 30 different areas across the state. And those linemen and other associated personnel hail from, of course, many from Florida, but from 27 different states. Of course, our Department of Transportation does have 1,200 personnel on standby to perform cut and toss operations, understanding how important it is to get those roadways clear as soon as possible. Supplies will be brought in by plane, boat, and by high water vehicle. Airports in Southwest Florida do have teams behind, and they are going to work to clear those runways as soon as the storm has passed. We appreciate the Florida National Guard's really impressive mobilization of over 5,000 folks, as well as 2,000 additional guardsmen from other states. They have 9 Chinook helicopters ready to go, and additional 22 helicopters will be coming in after landfall that will be here within the next 24 hours. Kevin will talk a little bit more about this, but we have the 5 urban search and rescue teams. You'll hear from FWC about what they're doing, high water vehicles from Florida Highway Patrol, and of course our Coast Guard partners. There is going to be a massive effort as soon as it passes Southwest Florida to be able to get out, recon the area, and identify areas where there may be a need of rescue services. And some of these counties obviously know where residents decided to hunker down in, so they're going to be looking there first. But this is going to be really important to be able to get, I think in Hurricane Michael, I mean, it took a few days to be able to get into Mexico Beach. We have the air assets to be able to recon and know where the response efforts need to go. And so in total, we have nearly 250 aircraft, more than 1,600 high water vehicles, and more than 300 boats of all drafts and sizes, including 250 already in the major impacted areas and nearly 50 that are staged and ready to come in as needed. These include smaller rescue-oriented boats, airboats, and larger boats that will be delivering supplies by water if need be. I want to thank the 26 states that have sent us support, including Tennessee, Virginia, Montana, New York, Colorado, Indiana, New Jersey, and Georgia. I just spoke with Kay Ivey from Alabama, and she's supporting sending some Black Hawk helicopters down to help. Governor Bill Lee in Tennessee fast-tracked a request that we had from Tennessee. We appreciate that. I was also just able to speak with John Bell Edwards from Louisiana. They've helped us. We said, hey, we've got a lot of experience in hurricanes recently, so these guys are good. Ask us. We want to send more. And so we really appreciate that consideration. And if we need that, we certainly will do that. We also understand that people that are displaced are going to need assistance. So the Department of Economic Opportunity has already deployed funding and guidance through community action agencies to help Floridians in need of short-term support, like utilities, hotel bills, and transportation, if they have been displaced by this storm. Please continue to monitor local meteorological reports, weather reports. Be very cautious about going out into hazardous conditions. And then once the storm passes your area, just make sure that you're very careful, because there's going to be a lot of things, a lot of hazards that are going to be down on the ground. I know there's a lot of people that have reached out. First of all, I want to say thanks. A lot of people have offered thoughts and prayers for the folks that are in the eye of this storm, and that means a lot to us. There's also people that want to be able to do their part, and so I've directed Volunteer Florida to activate the Florida Disaster Fund, where people can donate. It's much better to donate financially rather than sending items. We have everything we need in terms of the immediate response needs, but there will be thousands of Floridians who will need help rebuilding. And to contribute to the disaster fund, you can visit www.floridadisasterfund.org or text disaster to 20222. Again, that's text disaster to 20222. For those who want to come volunteer, we have an official volunteer portal at Volunteer Florida, and that's at www.volunteerflorida.org, www.volunteerflorida.org, and you can look to see of the volunteer opportunities. This is going to be a rough patch here for the rest of today and into tomorrow. But we understand how significant this storm is. Yes, there'll be an immediate response. Yes, there'll be things that happen with recovery. Eventually, there won't be much media attention on this as the weeks and months go on. But we understand a storm of this magnitude is going to require an effort over an extended period of time. Those are good folks down in Southwest Florida. They've got really great, thriving communities. This is not anything anyone wants to deal with. It's not something we certainly ask for, but we're going to step up. We're going to be there for folks, and we're going to make sure that folks get back on their feet, and Southwest Florida comes back better than ever. Okay, Kevin Guthrie.
Thank you, Governor. As the Governor has said, Hurricane Ian is approaching landfall as a Category 4 storm with winds of 155 miles per hour in Lee and Charlotte counties. At this time, the division has received nearly 1,000 resource requests from our impacted local partners, and 864 of those are either in process or completed. We are working as quickly as we can to address the needs of those impacted areas. This morning I talked with each and every local emergency manager in the direct path of the storm. If you are sheltering in place in the path of the storm, we're asking you to now please visit floridadisaster.org/info and fill out our shelter in place survey. Again, that is floridadisaster.org/info to fill out our shelter in place survey. The shelter in place survey is designed to provide critical information to first responders about the demographics of your household so that they can aid your families as soon as possible. This is primarily for those who did not evacuate, so that we know where you're at. This is not a substitute for 911. If you have an immediate need and you need first responder assistance, you need to dial 911. Please understand that those 911 services may not be able to come to you right now, but again, if you need emergency services, dial 911. Even if it is calm outside, you may be in the eye of the storm. I encourage our individuals near Sanibel, near that Fort Myers area, as the Eyewall starts to come onshore, if everything stops, the storm is not over. If you can hear us, if you can see us on your TV, you're most likely to have bright, sunshiny area here very soon. You're in the eye of the storm. Stay inside. Stay indoors. Do not go outside. You do not know when that eye wall will collapse. So please stay safe. Avoid down power lines and down trees and standing water when it is over. Use extreme caution. If you see any type of line, do not cut them. Do not cut fiber optic lines. Fiber optics are the backbone of our communication system that allows us to have connectivity for your cellular devices on wireless networks. It provides access to the internet. It provides access to social media. Please do not cut fiber optic lines. To the communities beginning to experience these devastating impacts of Hurricane Ian, know that the state of Florida is standing with you. We have plenty of resources to respond to your need. We have thousands of boats on the ground. We have thousands of boots on the ground. We're ready to assist you. We will make sure that all available resources are used to help you through this difficult time. Please do everything you can right now to stay safe. Thank you, Governor, very much for the opportunity to be here and be your director.
Thank you. All right, Colonel Roger Young, Director of the Division of Law Enforcement, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it. Thank you, Governor. Thank you, Director, for your leadership and support as always, but especially during these trying times. So on behalf of the FWC, I'm Colonel Roger Young, and know that the men and women of the FWC send our prayers and support to all those in the path of the storm at this time. But also know that the FWC officers across the state are prepared, trained, and ready for a full response to this storm. We have 100 officers outside of the affected area ready to respond with high water vehicles and specialized equipment and vessels. We also have 250 vessels staged already inside the affected area that will be ready and utilized for response to this storm. So just know that we appreciate all the support that we're getting, but officers will be ready to respond in this time. Just want to say thanks to everyone, and the FWC officers will be ready for response. Thank you.
Okay, Agency for Healthcare Administration, we have our Secretary, Simone Marstiller.
Governor, thank you very much for your leadership. Director Guthrie, you as well. Good afternoon. As the eye of Hurricane Ian makes landfall, all healthcare facilities have made the necessary preparations and stand ready for Ian's impact. Since the beginning of the emergency, our agency has been focused on the safety and well-being of residents and patients and hospitals and long-term care facilities. We've activated the health facility reporting system, and we've requested and still do request that all healthcare facilities continue to report their census, their available beds, their evacuation status, and their generator status information. And that includes even facilities that might be outside of the impacted areas, because we need to be sure that we can provide the necessary resources to assist everyone when the time comes for response and recovery. As of today, ACA's teams have coordinated with our licensed healthcare facilities in evacuating more than 7,000 patients and residents from 150 facilities. Additionally, our team has activated the Emergency Patient Lookup System, or E+. This system allows special needs shelters in impacted areas to retrieve patient medical records and help medical providers and emergency response personnel to locate missing or displaced persons after the storm. We also have nearly 400 ambulances, paratransit buses, and support vehicles standing by to respond to the areas of impact. In addition to ACA's team's regular visits to all of our licensed healthcare facilities, we have completed more than 343 additional on-site visits to our nursing homes and assisted living facilities within the cone of expectance to verify generator compliance in response to Hurricane Ian. Today, and I know you've heard the governor say this over the last few days, but 100% of our operating long-term care facilities have generators on site. We've also worked very closely with our partners at the Florida Hospital Association, the Florida Healthcare Association and Leading Age, Florida Senior Living, and the Florida Assisted Living Associations. And we've activated, working with them, the Patient Movement Mission. We know that facilities are currently bracing for impact as Hurricane Ian is anticipated to make landfall here shortly. Following the storm, the Agency for Healthcare Administration stands ready to immediately deploy our surveyors for on-site visits to the impacted facilities. During these visits, we will ensure that each facility is maintaining an appropriate temperature for residents and that all other conditions in those facilities are safe for residents. If you are a patient or resident or family member of someone in one of our long-term care facilities or any other healthcare facility, and you experience any issues during the storm that are related to that facility or your stay there or the service, please know that you can lodge a complaint with the Agency for Healthcare Administration on our website, and that's ahca.myflorida.com, using our online complaint portal. If you are a licensed healthcare provider and experience any issues during the storm, please, of course, notify your local emergency manager, but also please report through our health facility reporting system immediately so that we know exactly what your status is and what we need to do to provide you the resources and help that you need. Moving forward, the agency will continue to require these kinds of status reports for power outages, bed availability, and other needs. This has truly been a collaborative effort, and I and my team appreciate all of the work that our agency partners have been putting in. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. So as we see power outages accumulate over the next day, 2 days, the crews that are assembled, massive numbers of people, one of the first orders of business, restore power, fuel, all the essentials. Not every power outage is going to be created equal across the state over the next 2 days. When you have a storm coming in at 155 miles an hour, that's not just going to knock down a few power lines. Yeah, it's going to do that, but it also has the potential to really uproot a lot of the infrastructure that makes people connected and that is used to deliver power to people. And so that will just require a reconstruction of that. And that's something that can be done, but it's not as easy as just simply hooking up a down power line back into place. And so as you get more severe wind impacts, more powerful storm, the storm surge, that's where you're in jeopardy of seeing a lot of that infrastructure disrupted in a way that will require more than just simply rehooking it. It's also the case that you may have homes and or businesses that are not going to be able to take the power because of changes to what's happened to their structures. So just keep that in mind. The folks that are staged are mindful of those different things. They want to get in as soon as possible, assess the damage, and help do the restoration efforts. Some of that may just be typical repair, but some of it may be more in the line of reconstruction. So just be prepared for that. I mean, we've been saying that there was going to be, significant power outages with a storm of this magnitude. That's just the reality. So it's going to pass today from Southwest Florida. As soon as it's safe to go in, there's going to be people. I've already talked to a lot of the locals. They know where they need to look to see the damage assessments, to look to see where people may be in harm's way. Obviously, folks at the state level are going to be doing the same thing, and it's important. And we want to make sure, obviously, save people that may need to be rescued, but then get these services started again, because we need to get people back on their feet as soon as possible. Okay, with that, I'll take some questions.
That there were some people that have chosen not to stay, that lived in that were staying in evacuation areas. Do you have any sense?
That chose to stay, you mean?
That chose to stay even though they're in evacuation areas. Do you have any sense as to how many people that is? I know you're doing a survey.
Well, that's voluntary in terms of who wants to participate in that. I just spoke with the Charlotte County Sheriff, which is, of course, going to be probably ground zero for this landfall. And it's their view that the vast majority of people in that Zone A did, in fact, evacuate. Now, they have an island community where they had 31 people that were told, were offered, the transit, and they just said that they wanted to stay and shelter in place. And so I know a lot of those barrier island communities, the counties discontinued services, so they were incentivized to get in maybe a more comfortable environment. But some of those people just made that decision to stay, and they, the local officials were not going to grab them by the shirt collar and drag them out of their own house. And so they did that. And look, we've been saying that if you're in an evacuation zone, once that order is made, you're risking potentially your life by staying, and people did that. Nevertheless, as much as you may disagree with that decision, if there's people in harm's way when this storm passes that need help, we're going to be out there helping folks. I mean, that's just the way we're going to do it. And I know that the folks down there in Charlotte and the surrounding counties feel the same way. And there's a lot of resources that have been brought to bear to do just that. Yep, go ahead.
At this point, Governor, have you heard anything about, and I know it's early, so it's probably too soon to tell, but fatalities, any serious injuries, anything like that associated with this one?
Kevin, I have not gotten a report on that yet.
We did have 2 people transferred on tourism last night.
Question for Secretary Marsteller. Of those 150 facilities, how many were hospitals, and do you have a sense of how many patients within those hospitals that would encompass?
The most recent information that I have, 15 hospitals evacuated, and that amounts to roughly 350 patients. Yeah.
It's interesting. Of course, you guys have been following the track, I mean, it was going to be maybe North Florida, then the Tampa. People were talking about one of the worst case scenarios. Of course, it's gone down. My view on that is wherever it hits, if you're in that community, it's probably worst case scenario for you. So I don't necessarily use those. But when it was the Tampa, I spoke with the CEO of Tampa General, and they have a fortification system of their hospital that can withstand like 10, 15 feet of storm surge. And so they do that so that they can keep the patients there, because if you don't have that and you're in a low-lying area, you got to do the evacuations. A number of the hospital systems have done that, who are in those low-lying areas. I think particularly in the Tampa area, I know we had a lot of special needs evacuations, as we should have. I mean, you got to take the information that you have, and they're going to feel effects from this. But my hope is that those patients are going to be able to be brought back as soon as that storm has passed. And I don't anticipate major structural damage. Would be my hope in some of those areas.
So how many individual?
I probably do.
You don't have a take on evacuations for Cape Coral. Just looked up. If you look at the storm surge diagrams that NWS has, it looks like there's a lot of the storm surges in that area. Sanibel and Captiva are getting hammered right now. I'm just wondering how evacuation efforts went there as they embraced the eye.
Again, all of those individuals were under evacuation orders. We don't actually have the numbers of what the percent was that evacuated versus those that didn't. I would imagine, since most of that same area went through Charlie, they probably evacuated. Again, Charlie was a fraction of the size of this particular storm, but I would imagine that most people that have lived through that, they went ahead and evacuated.
I think another issue is just, there were people that evacuated Tampa Bay to Fort Myers because you see the different weather tracks, and it was thought that it would hit Tampa, maybe go up the coast, and that was not that long ago. I mean, that was 36, 48 hours ago. You go back another 12, 24 hours from that, it was going to hit Taylor County. And so I think that some of the folks in Southwest Florida, because so much focus was on Tampa, then when it says, oh, actually it may be coming here, I do think some heeded the warnings, but I think it's because the forecast can kind of be all over the map, that sometimes people say, well, you said it was there, then you said it was there. I think in the future, we tried to stress the uncertainty. When you have a model taking it to Louisiana and another model taking it to Sarasota, and then you just kind of meet, it's not probably the ideal situation. Now that we're close, once you're within 72, certainly 48, those are very accurate forecasts. But before that, there's just so much uncertainty. But I think sometimes people think, well, you said it was going to be here, and then now you're saying it's going to be here. So we'll see how it goes. I know the folks in Lee County, once that forecast changed, I know they acted very quickly, as they should have. And I know that they provided people with an ample opportunity to be able to evacuate. I do think some heeded it, some did not and chose to hunker down. And hopefully, the people that made that choice, that it works out favorably for them.
Issues are going to be specifically for the Tampa Bay area when it comes to rescue efforts from the state. What do you think the biggest issues?
In the Tampa Bay area for rescue? Well, obviously we have enough assets and we understand that this is a big impact, that the rescue efforts are not going to be limited to one municipality or one county. You're going to potentially have more. My hope is that you're not going to need massive rescue efforts the further away you are from the storm. I also have a huge amount of confidence in the folks in the Tampa Bay area. You look at the sheriff's departments, these are very first-rate operations. They have excellent ability to respond respond to that. Kevin will be here. Our folks will be here if needed. But our sense is that the further away from the storm, probably the local responders are going to be able to handle that. Here in Southwest Florida, you're going to have all those local responders out, but then you're also going to have all this support, Coast Guard, FWC, you're going to have National Guard. I mean, this is a really, really concerted effort, and that's just the reality when you have such a significant impacted spot. So hopefully they don't need us to fleet resources up. We will do it if there is really significant. But you look at the guys they got up there, Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Manatee. I mean, those are really, really professional operations. Did you want Shimon, you said?
I did.
Okay.
Just one follow-up question. You mentioned that there were 150 facilities with evacuated patients, and 15 of them are hospitals. How many nursing homes patients were involved in? And there's always the issue of transfer trauma in transfer of an evacuation. How many, what are you doing to kind of anticipate that trauma on those individuals?
Well, to answer your how many question first, nursing homes that have been evacuated, at least, again, most recent information I have, 40, ALFs 91, the number of nursing home residents 3,508, number of ALF residents 3,012, and that's the most recent information I have as of probably 10 o'clock or so this morning, remembering that the facilities are self-reporting into our health facility reporting system. Now, to answer your other question, the Agency for Healthcare Administration has many partners involved in the effort to move patients when they need to be moved. Not only do the facility staff have a role to play, but all of the associations that I mentioned earlier, right? So the Hospital Association, Healthcare Association, Leading Age, all of those individuals are directly, they directly work with their member facilities, so nursing homes and ALFs. So it's a coordinated effort to make sure that the individuals can be placed in the right location for them, keeping in mind their health needs. Our health facility reporting system is also used to find where there are vacancies in other facilities. Many of these nursing homes in particular, have sister facilities elsewhere in the state. So it makes that kind of transfer a lot easier and less stressful on the individuals who have to change their environment.
So we'll have another update in another few hours. I'll just say it seems like over the last 12 to 24 hours, every time you look at this storm, it's just been bad news. It gets stronger, it gets larger, and we really appreciate people's concern for Florida. We do appreciate the prayers. I'm going to be saying prayers that the folks there are able to get through this as best as humanly possible. This is a really, really significant storm. It will be one of the storms people always remember when they think about Southwest Florida. Probably be the big one that they always remember. And if you know anything about our state, you go to Panama City, that Michael is just part of the DNA of the community. Homestead, Hurricane Andrew is just part of the DNA of the community. This Ian is going to rank up there with that. So we need the thoughts and prayers over the near term, and then there's going to be a huge effort on the back end to help people and to get the communities back on their feet. Thank you.
explosion in growth and strength, and boy, we Category 1 hurricane, or it stalls even more and churns off the coast and a little bit of upwelling, and it'll start to weaken that way. But that's not good, because that just means we get more of this. So it's a no-win situation here, David. We just got to bear down and get through it. Unfortunately, it's going to take another 24 hours to do that or more for the entire state here, David.
All those scenarios that you lay out are still possible at this point. Of course, Rob Marciano, our thanks to you. We'll be coming back to you throughout the afternoon here. I want to go back live to these pictures from Fort Myers, because what you're seeing right now is exactly what Ginger and Rob had forecasted. These are the initial bands and power of this hurricane as it prepares to make landfall on the western coast of Florida. The storm surge being reported already. The hotel pools completely vanished underneath the water. We've seen the images coming in of cars in those streets completely flooded. Only the rooftops of the cars now visible in many of these communities hardest hit by this hurricane coming ashore. As Rob mentioned, they're moving very slow, or very little shear left for this hurricane, with the exception of once it starts to make landfall, perhaps the land and the structures themselves. But as Ginger mentioned, it's going to be traveling very slowly as it makes its way across Florida. So let's bring back in our chief meteorologist, Ginger Z, just to remind everyone, not only is it the storm surge you're concerned about, Ginger, but once this makes its way over land, as Rob just said, this still has the potential to be a Category 1 hurricane traveling over the highly populated Orlando and surrounding areas.
Yes, and that's a big issue, because it is not just that brunt of the storm when it first comes on shore. This landfall is imminent. We should see it. And I want to take you with me real quick and just come over the ledge, because even in the last couple of minutes, since I spoke to you last, we've watched the dock that's covered in water unravel and pieces of it floating through the ocean. That little house that's right there is almost gonna go, because once that water gets up a little higher on there, you can twist these off their foundation. We have seen it before. Just 4 years ago, when I was talking to you all from Hurricane Michael, we watched the exact same thing. The power of this water is insane. It is unreal to watch. It's as unreal as the wind. And David, that imminent landfall should be at 155 mile per hour plus. If it is, this would be only the 5th storm in our recorded history to do so. The 1935 Labor Day storm, Camille, Andrew, Michael, and now Ian.
And I remember
David?
well standing in Michael with you, Ginger, and you saw those houses literally float past you while we were on the air.
Yes.
Again, facing the potential of a hurricane very close to that size. We're seeing, I believe, transformers, electrical power lines in the images just next to Ginger there. We always see that in storms of this scope and of this nature. We're seeing it already. Ginger, please stay safe. Glad to see that you're on that balcony and surrounded by very heavy walls there. Ginger, our thanks to you. Let's take it to Janae Norman. You heard both Ginger and Rob warn what this could bring inland once it makes its way to Orlando. And you're in Orlando, Janae, and they've taken real precautions there because they know it's on its way.
They absolutely have, David. You know, this is a big tourist destination. We've got the famed theme parks here, and all of those theme parks announced that they are closing. They are closed today and tomorrow as this area does prepare for Hurricane Ian. I spoke with Orlando Mayor Buddy Dyer about the preparations, and he says the biggest concerns here in Orlando, because of the track of that storm really coming right over this area, is going to be flooding and wind damage. So he told me that in preparation, local officials have lowered the levels of many of the area lakes ahead of all of that anticipated rainfall that should be starting in just a little bit here. And he also told me that garbage collection was a big part of their preparations. That's to try to make sure that there isn't extra things around that could become debris, that could become projectiles in those hurricane force winds. Local schools have closed, many of them for the rest of the week. And I asked Mayor Dyer, you know, in Florida, they get these storms. How do you make sure that folks are taking this seriously and really preparing ahead of this storm? He said, we're fortunate that with this one, this is the first storm of the season. He said usually it's when there have been multiple storms. Think back to 2004, back-to-back storms. He said because this is the first one, people tend to take it more seriously, and that's what he's been seeing. People really preparing, some already in parts of this area heading out to shelters, trying to buckle down, get where they need to be before all of that weather moves up here later this evening, David.
All right, Janae Norman, our thanks to you as well. Let's bring it to Gio Benitez, who is live in Tampa, and as we know for some time early on, the track track showed it making a direct hit to Tampa. It has moved steadily southward from there. Doesn't mean Tampa won't feel this. Gio's in Tampa, and of course, Gio, you can fill us in on how they prepared in Tampa and also the ripple effects we're seeing already. You covered transportation as well for us. We know many of the airports shutting down.
Absolutely, David. Just about every airport in this region has shut down, or certainly there are no planes in the air, even if those airports are open. We are starting to feel that blowing rain right now, David, and it's the sheer size of the storm. That is what makes it all so different, because this is going to be an all-day event for so much of Florida, because it's not just the size of the storm itself, but when you look at that eye, usually when we look at an eye, as a native Floridian, we know this, David, when you look at that eye, you're typically thinking, well, maybe if it makes landfall in this particular town or this city, that's where it's going to be worse. In this case, you're talking about an eye that spans some 40 miles, a huge amount of the Florida Gulf Coast. And so many towns will be affected by this. Folks here in Tampa have prepared. They certainly heeded those warnings. Yesterday, we saw them evacuate. This morning, early this morning, sort of the last moments to evacuate, we were driving around on the streets, and we saw there was nobody on the road. People were paying attention and listening because they saw this storm and they saw something is very different with Hurricane Ian. And of course, as it makes landfall now, we are seeing that eye right there. And it is just a massive, massive eye that's going to be making landfall here, David.
Gio Benita is also part of our team right there in Florida as Hurricane Ian makes landfall early this afternoon in Florida. Of course, we haven't received that officially yet, but you can see that as it gets this close to shore, it doesn't matter whether the official landfall is taking place or not. The severe impacts already being felt. If we look at those live pictures from Fort Myers, you can see those warnings of storm surge that were possible are being seen already. The water covering those pools, those resort areas, as well as streets, cars almost disappearing under the water in some places. And joining us as we look at these pictures from the National Hurricane Center is Michael Brennan, the acting deputy director at NOAA. And Michael, you have been warning of the strength, the scope of this hurricane for days now. It is now on Florida's doorstep. What worries you most?
Well, right now we're concerned with that Eyewall moving onshore here near Sanibel, Captiva Island, Lee County, Charlotte County. Those are the very worst conditions that are now moving onshore with those, potentially catastrophic wind damage, those winds of 155 miles per hour. And we're seeing that storm surge, that push, essentially the winds of Ian pushing the Gulf of Mexico over land here in places like Fort Myers, up the Caloosahatchee River, into Charlotte Harbor. And that's that catastrophic storm surge where you can see water levels of as high as 18 feet above ground level. So this is really not a survivable situation for people who are left in those evacuation areas. Hopefully everybody's gotten out up till now. Between the wind and the storm surge is a very deadly situation unfolding.
Yeah, Michael, put that into perspective for us. When you say 18 feet possible of storm surge here, we're talking about seawater coming in and inundating those communities. And as you mentioned, that is not a survivable situation.
That's right. Yeah, you can think about it. I'm standing here. I'm 6 feet tall, so that's water that's like 2 to 3 times above my head, and that's in that area here from Inglewood down to Bonita Beach. And you can even see down south in Naples, we can seeing storm surge inundation of 8 to 12 feet. And so we're, the west coast of Florida is so sensitive to storm surge that Gulf water gets pushed quite far inland. So not just right along the immediate barrier islands, but well inland into these canals and creeks and harbors where people have homes and businesses and everything else. So very concerned about that today, and that's going to be an unfolding problem.
Any idea, Michael, when you'll declare whether or not this has actually made landfall?
Well, it's on its way. The landfall really means that the center of the eye has crossed the coast, and you can see the eye wall is moving onshore. We still have the center about 45 miles off the coast, maybe 30 to 40 miles off the coast here, or southwest of Punta Gorda. So, over the next few hours, we'll see that storm as it's moving northeast at about 9. We'll see that center gradually move onshore, but the eye will tend to wobble around a little bit. It might slow down, it might speed up, so it's not always a steady motion, but it doesn't really matter. Those conditions are now occurring on land, and that's what's affecting people there.
Stick with us here, Michael. One more question for you. I know your time is very valuable here, and I really do appreciate this. As you point out, these communities, Punta Gorda, Fort Myers, Naples, Boca Grande, they're about to feel the real brunt of this hurricane as it makes landfall imminently. Once you get past making landfall, Michael, you've also been talking about this, how long this is going to be over the state of Florida and inland, how the impact will be severe as well.
Right, yeah, we're going to see Ian take a slow northeastward motion across the state of Florida, and it move near the Orlando area and then offshore of the East Coast as we get into Thursday evening. So we're talking about it not moving off the coast until tomorrow evening. And then it's going to turn northward and affect Georgia and South Carolina. So we're expecting widespread impacts. We have a hurricane warning in effect along the Florida East Coast and Brevard County, the Melbourne area, the Space Coast up to Daytona Beach area. And the big threat is going to be inland heavy rain. This area in red to the north of the track of Ian's center could see widespread rainfall totals of 10 to 15 inches, isolated totals as high as 2 feet of rainfall across central and northern Florida, places like Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, St. Augustine, Daytona Beach. This could lead to catastrophic freshwater flooding, so flooding due to rainfall in these areas, and that's going to play out over the next couple of days.
That's just extraordinary. Michael Brennan will heed the warning. Looking forward to talking with you later on World News Tonight, if that's possible for you. Michael, thank you, the acting director, deputy director there at NOAA, bringing us up to speed. I want to go back to Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z in Fort Myers, because Ginger, you're witnessing it move in even closer, and you're seeing exactly what you thought you would see at this time.
That wind has shifted, David. We're watching that little house we've been watching the whole time rock on its foundation. I anticipate that comes off any second. All of our ears just popped. That means that the pressure has bottomed out. The pool below us is gone. When we started this special report, you could see the pool. Everything is changing so rapidly. The pieces of debris are getting bigger in the water. That means that things all around us are getting ripped up. We're hearing reports of potential buildings that have been missing now on Fort Myers Beach. We have not confirmed those, but wow, look at that wind pickup. This is the backside of the Eyewall. We're only 5 miles from the center of the eye. The worst is still moving to our northeast. This is only the beginning of Ian, and it is frightening to watch the power of water do what it does, and I really hope that everyone is at a safe level, and we obviously are inside this room. Ears still popping. I cannot tell you how eerie that is to feel it. But that house now almost covered. It's broken out the windows and the doors, and that's usually when that sway happens. I've seen this so many times. That tilts, and then it'll get washed into the ocean.
Ginger Z, just excellent
David.
reporting. You, along with Rob, Victor, Gio, Janae, Ginger, our thanks to you. Please, you and the crew, again, I say it often, but please stay safe for us. Ginger describing, when your ears pop. We've been in so many of these hurricanes. We know that's when the pressure is dropping. She is now about 5 miles from the eye of this storm as it approaches west coast of Florida. The picture's right there live in the screen there. That is Fort Myers already feeling the impact of Hurricane Ian. And you heard from the NOAA, the acting deputy director moments ago, saying that the landfall is about to take place at any time now. We will continue to monitor this. As soon as we see any major downgrade in the situation there, of course, we'll be back on the air. So again, our thanks to Ginger Z and the entire team on the ground in Florida. Our coverage will continue on ABC News Live all afternoon and on abcnews.com as well. I'll be back throughout the afternoon when news warrants, and a special edition of World News Tonight a bit later right here on this ABC station. I'm David Muir in New York. Good day.
This has been a special report from ABC News.
I love vampire stories. I absolutely love it. Our next guest here to tell us all about it. You know him from his hit role, Great Worm, in the Emmy Award-winning series Game of Thrones. Now, the vampire himself is in the building. Everybody, Jacob Anderson is here with us. That's how we greet you being in studio for the first time, but that's how we should greet you. You love this town, but you haven't been to New York since the pandemic. It's been a while. How'd you like to be back?
I love New York. Yeah? New York is like, it reminds me of London. It's kind of, I feel like there's something that feels really like community when everybody's kind of ignoring each other. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I feel at home when everybody's in very close proximity, but like not looking at each other.
We suffer together, right?
That's a great answer. That's perfectly descriptive of New York, right?
So we have to ask you about the movie because